The second thing I want to talk about is the Coastal Zone Act. Now this goes back, as far as I was concerned, to Governor Carvel's Goals Committee. And I was on that. The first time I really sat down with a bunch of interesting, dedicated people. Justice Dan Herman was the chairman of it, and we talked about Wither, Delaware. What kind of a state do we want to pass on to our children and grandchildren? So when I became governor, the second week I appointed a Goals Commission. And I went before them and said, now I'd like to have you get the people of Delaware in a debate about what kind of a future we want to have, we want to pass on to our children and grandchildren. I said, for example, the southern part of this state has been kind of ignored by human beings as they built from Boston down to Washington. It's a relatively unspoiled place, a great place for hunting, fishing, boating, swimming, just lying out in the sun. Not only for Delawareans, but many people from Philadelphia, Baltimore, and Washington. On the other hand, we have a major opportunity to develop the coast, because at that time we had this consortium of 13 oil companies that had plans for a whole series of refineries and a deep sea port. It's when they anticipated a deluge of oil coming from the Middle East, which really hasn't happened as they had anticipated. But almost certainly the Delaware coast is going to become like Marcus Hook area. So I said, now we have those two opportunities, but we can't have them both. They're incompatible. So I said, personally, I lean toward the first. I declared a moratorium on any more construction along the coast. And we set up a committee to study it and got a major citizens group working on it. And Bert Carvel, then a Citizen Carvel, he joined to Delawareans for Orderly Development and others to support this. And as you know, we got that bill through the legislature. And that's had a tremendous impact, not only nationally, but internationally, as an example of what could be done to have the foresight to protect the unspoiled area that way. And that doesn't interfere with the economy. There are other places you can do the same things. But those people say there's a conflict between environmental protection and development. Tell them they're dead wrong. You need a leadership that wants to do both, and we can do both. But obviously you can't put a refinery exactly where you want to go hunting and fishing and swimming, but you can put it some miles away. As the third thing is furthering justice in the state. Again, I tie it back to Governor Carvel. As he mentioned, I led the 3S Citizens Campaign to reform the prison system when he was governor. And we were on the phone, or I was in his office regularly. We worked on that thing for 3 years until those bills got through the state legislature. We had 6,000 people in Delaware working on it. But then I got an education about our Delaware criminal justice system. And when I became governor, I said, boy, one of the first things I want to do is get rid of that whipping post, which I thought was a disgrace to our state. The only state in the nation still has such a thing. And we eventually made that happen, thanks to a lot of good work by Laird Stabler, who headed a legislative committee on revising the criminal code. And we got rid of the debtor's prison. Do you realize we used to send a person to prison who couldn't pay a traffic fine? Might only get 10 days in prison, but now he had a prison record and he couldn't get a job. He couldn't get a job at DuPont Company, I know, in other places because he had a prison record. So it just triggered off. You and I could go pay $35 for a fine. We'd be kind of teed off if we got caught or so, but it wouldn't hurt our marriage. It wouldn't hurt our job. But the person who couldn't pay it had a tremendous penalty. The state was a major contributor to the problem, I decided. We worked the legislature and wiped out the debtor's prison in Delaware, and later on, a few years later, the United States Supreme Court decided that was appropriate, that for a state to outlaw sending somebody to prison because they couldn't pay a fine. Also, one of the disgraces I remember that Governor Carvel used to talk about was we had juveniles in the adult prison and all kinds of problems going on there. We got them out of the adult prison. Another thing in that area was a direct follow-up of what Governor Terry had done. As you know, Governor Terry made a major change in our magistrate system. He came there with all the authority from being Chief Justice. He knew what a horrible system that was. Imagine magistrates getting paid by commissions they got from the fines they levied on people. And of course it was so politically involved that it really didn't provide very good justice. And Governor Terry corrected that, put those people on a salary, made some other changes, and when we came in, we added to that. We said, henceforth, we're going to split these jobs between the two parties. When I was became governor, 53 of the magistrates were Democrats, and 1 was an independent, and 0 were Republicans. And what we did is split them about 50-50, and we set up a group to give them oral and written tests. And 3 magistrates who had IQs in the 80s, we got them removed from their job, thanks to good help from Chief Justice Wolcott, and by using a new court of the judiciary which had the power to remove them. Just by talking to them, they decided to resign before going before the court of the judiciary. But now the people are subjected to tests and a sort of a competition to get the most competent and talented people in the job of magistrate. And the last thing I want to refer to is the career education program. We worked hard to further career education in Delaware, and that is a direct follow-up of Governor Terry's program again, where he brought in, as you know, the Delaware Technical and Community College, which is a major milestone in our state. And we worked on that very hard, increased the attendance there by 2.5-fold in the period, and we funded 3 more campuses, worked with the high school vocational groups, funded the students' vocational organizations. We participated all over the country in that. In fact, the American Vocational Association came here and presented to me on behalf of Delawareans an award to Delaware for becoming the career education state. But this is a direct follow-up again of what Governor Terry had started. And so I think it's important to recognize that these things which happen are just the resultant of many, many years of contributions by a number of people, and eventually we get the job done.